What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Outpost. It is me, Jello, and today we are going to go over my favorite start deck of the 6 start decks from Divinez, Marine General of the Great Sea, Cristianos. So this will be a quick deck profile video, as well as my thoughts and processes for the deck. So let's just get straight into it. So for the ride deck, we run the original Zorga ride line in Vanguard Chain and Black Tears Husk Dragon, mostly just to start getting cards into our drop zone. So Vanguard Chain's ability, once per turn, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw 2 and discard up to 1 order from among them. And if you don't discard an order, then you have to discard 2. At worst, some card cycling. At best, you get an extra draw, and you know that you have an order that you can pick back up with Black Tears Husk. So when it's placed, you can choose up to 1 normal order from drop and put it into hand. And then of course we have Cristianos himself. Once per turn, you can counterblast 1 to search your deck for a copy of him, and he gets 10k. And once per turn as well, you can Energy Blast 4 to discard the top 2 cards of your deck and choose up to 2 grade 3 or less cards from drop and call them to rear. And he did get a lot of bad reception when he first was revealed. I was among the mob that was very underwhelmed with his skill, but now that I've had the chance to really work with the deck and play around with different iterations, I found a sort of pocket where Cristianos actually feels really fun to play. And we'll just get straight into the main deck now. The grade 3s, we have 3 extra copies of Cristianos for our Persona rides, and we run 2 copies of Connection Hunter Severin. I only run the 2 because you're milling the deck so much anyway that he's probably going to end up in the drop zone, if not in the damage zone by accident. Its ability is when it's placed on rear from drop, if you have a Cristianos Vanguard, it gets an extra 10k until end of turn, and it also basically hollows itself. So at the end of the turn, it retires. Then its second ability is when it attacks, you can Soul Blast 1 to give your Vanguard 5k, and if you Soul Blasted a Cristianos, you can restand the unit at the end of the battle that it attacks. So it's a self-restanding rear guard, and you can just dump a bunch of buffs onto it, and it swings like a truck, basically. And that is it for the grade 3s. Next, into the grade 2s we go. These are the first 2 cards that are actually going to disappear from the deck once set 4 comes out. We have 2 copies of Prevailing Dragon. At the end of the battle that it attacked, if it was placed on rear by a card's ability this turn, then you can retire it at the end of the battle, choose an order from your drop, and put it back to hand. Really good as your second call off of Cristianos. Obviously, you want to be able to call the Severins out because it's a 23k body kind of right off the bat. And this gets us the main order of the deck back into hand, so we're able to proc it more often. But with the new stuff coming out, I probably will be replacing this. So as for what we're replacing it with, we have a common that's coming out in set 4 called Knight of Crimson Bullet Louvois. And basically its ability is when this unit is placed on rear, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Cristianos in its card name, you can choose up to 3 normal units without Sentinel from your drop and put them on the bottom of your deck in any order, and it gets an extra 5k. That's one of the 2 options that we have. The other unit we have is Memorial Stem Alpina. Its ability is when it's placed on rear, choose a grade 3 or greater card with Cristianos in its card name from your drop, and you can put it on the bottom of your deck, and you basically get to search top 5 for a copy of Severin and add it to hand. If you did, you can choose a card from your hand and discard it, and that is a grade 1. The first one that I mentioned is a grade 2, for anyone that didn't already know. Both of them have the ability to recycle your Persona Ride copies, so the deck survives a little bit longer than it usually would, because you usually only get the 3 Persona rides. But with them, not only do you get to search, you also get the Severins into the drop zone right away, off of the Alpinum at least, or you can just get mass copies of your Persona rides back into deck if the games get that long. But yeah, so far, the Prevailing Dragon has been able to recoup resources that are used throughout the game. So that's a card that I've enjoyed using quite a lot. Next, we have 2 copies of Tideline Dragon. Very simple ability. If you persona out this turn, you can Soul Blast 1 to give this unit and another one of your units 10k until the end of turn. So generally on a persona ride turn, I'll have the Severin come out on the right, and the Tideline Dragon come out on the left, and I'll Soul Blast 1 to give Tideline and the Severin an extra 10k, which gives the Severin a base swing of 13, 23 off the persona, 33 off of Tideline, and an extra 10k off of itself. So it's a base 43k swing, and that swings twice per turn. And that's kind of the base of the entire idea. But yeah, 2 copies of Tideline Dragons there. Next, we run 2 copies of Love Binding Maiden Margaret. Set 10 Cycler, Soul Blast 1 when discarded during your ride phase to draw a card and cycle it back into the deck. And her second ability is really good for decks that kind of keep stuff out on the field or has some kind of intercept ability. But when it's placed on rear, if you Persona Road during the turn, you can Counterblast 1 to choose 2 of your opponent's front row rear guards, and they cannot stand until the end of the turn, and your opponent also can't intercept for the rest of the turn. So she paralyzes the field while you get to swing big with Severin on the side. And then next we run the 1 copy of Maple just as a free call, especially in the early game where you want to sort of set up your back row more than your front row. So getting the free Maple call out and also being able to get another 2 units, you proliferate your field very easily with this deck because Cristianos gives you 2 and the Maples kind of just come and go. But next, we run 4 copies of the main gimmick order of the deck, Nectar of Sensationalism. Choose one of your rear guards, and until end of turn, it gets an extra 5k for every 5 cards in your drop zone. If you have 15 cards in your drop, then that unit also gets an extra critical. Now we have a card that gives extra crit and power, and a rear guard that restands itself, and that is already at 33k by itself at worst. So we are swinging for pretty big numbers with crits both of the time, and yeah, it's just very enjoyable. I really have a fun time playing this deck because of this order. And then of course we have our defensives here. We have 1 Sweet Honey Garden, Soul Blast 1, choose one of your units, it gets 15k until end of turn. If your drop has a blitz order, you get 25 instead of 15. And then we have Believe in the Blooming Buds of Tomorrow. Play this if you have 2 or more grade 1 or less rear guards. Choose a unit that is being attacked, and it gets 15k until the end of that battle. If your opponent's Vanguard was placed by a card ability during this turn, you get an extra 30 instead of 15. And you're always going to just have stuff in your back row unless you're playing against a field nuke deck like Varga, for example, that is going to be. But in other cases, you will have a back row that survives and gets you this extra defensive value. And that's it for the grade 2s. So just utility and field buffs, or field debuffs in the case of Margaret here. Moving into the grade 1s, we have our PGs. Very simple, very easy, very universal. Next, we run 4 copies of Performing Petal Diantha. When this unit is placed on rear from hand, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can Counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop, and call it to rear. Now the nice thing about Severin is that as long as it's called from the drop, it gets all that power. As long as your Vanguard is Cristianos, and this deck won't have a problem. But it doesn't have to be specifically called off of Cristianos' ability. So if you want to be able to call other stuff with the Cristianos to kind of set up your field, and then you call the Diantha to call the Severin out, you still get all of the bonuses. You get the 10k and the holification, basically. And during your turn, if you have 2 or more grade 1 or less rear guards in your back row, it gets an extra 5k. And next we have 4 copies of Conceited Noble Philander. When this unit is placed on rear from hand, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 from among them, discard it, and shuffle the deck. And during your turn, if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, then it's an 18k beater or 18k booster. And everyone already knows about Philander. This deck is probably the most expensive quick start deck that I've built, and I was just lucky enough to have had these kind of in my possession before the price spiked. But yeah, Philanders just build a very good back row for you. If not, then of course you just run the Dianthas. It's less 5k, but they're also proportionately cheaper than the Philanders. Anyway, next we run 2 copies of Battle Siren Eleftheria. We really just use it for that energy charge too. There aren't many copies of her, but I think that it's still okay. If you want to run something else in this spot, I probably would just run more copies of Kutir here. I don't have any more available copies for the Kutir because I put the rest of them in my Haja deck, but in total you could replace the Eleftherias with the Alpinums once they release, just because again it's more just for resource building. The Diantha and the Philanders are there for the power, but yeah, the rest is utility and making sure that the field is hitting numbers that are high and consistent. But yeah, that is it for the grade 1s. For anyone that doesn't already know what Kutir does, when he's placed on rear from hand, you can discard a card, search your deck for an order, and put it into drop. And you can play that order from drop until the end of turn. When you play the order from drop, it goes back to the bottom of your deck. And it's kind of a pseudo search as well. But yes, as long as we are able to get that proc on turn 4 off of the Nectar of Sensationalism, we are sort of flying already. But yes, that is the part of the deck that isn't triggers. And next into the triggers, we run 4 crits, we run 3 draw, Bless Favor, and 4 fronts and heals. I'm playing the multi-attack 25k shield heal because lots of things just restand, so it's always good to have that. I am running the Bless Favor, but if you wanted to get even more value out of that Severin, then you could probably play Valnut as well. That is it for the deck itself, and now let's get into some imaginary plays here. I do have a couple of videos of me playing this deck already, but just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to keep these 3. The Nectar of Sensationalism is automatically going to be good for us, and the Cristianos copy is fine. Once we get, again, the cyclers from set 4, we'll be able to just kind of discard this and then use the new grade 1 and grade 2 to put it back into the deck and look for other things. So right now we have Cristianos, Lena Tideline, Nectar of Sensationalism, and RPG. Odds, we go first. Even, so we're going second. So we'll draw. Okay, we can discard the Tideline because we don't really need it until turn 4. And we'll ride into Rancor Chain since we're hypothetically going second. We get our energy and we draw off of the starter, and then Rancor Chain will Soul Blast 1, draw 2 cards, sorry, and then we're going to discard one of the order. One order from hand. And then from here, we have a pretty good toolbox right now. Okay, we'll swing with Rancor Chain, get another Diantha, and we'll end our turn. Take 2, 1, power, 2, power, stand and draw. Okay, and we'll just discard the other Tideline. We don't actually need it. To ride Black Tear's Husk, and Tear Husk will get us our Nectar back. We'll go to 6 energy over here. And then we can actually just play the Eleftheria to go from 6 to 8. And then we'll swing for 18. Oh, and there's our Severin. Okay, and our opponent's is already a grade 3. Take the 2. The problem with all the start decks, obviously, is that you your starting point is very far behind in terms of tempo if you're going second. Going first, you're kind of going even because the deck doesn't fully go online until turn 4, or until your persona riding. Unless you can find other ways to get your Cristianos into soul. We'll play the Honeycomb Theseus and discard the Severin. And then we'll go into our turn, stand, draw. Okay, from here, we can discard a Dienta to ride into Cristianos. And we'll go to 10 energy. Cristianos' skill, we'll counterblast 1. Search the deck for a copy of himself. There's another copy. I probably just skipped the copy. Oh no, there's the 3rd copy there. Okay, so we're only going to get 2 Personarize this game. Hypothetically, but that's okay. From here, we gain an extra 10k. And then we can Energy Blast 4, down to 6, mill 2. Okay, and then we call 2. And in this case, I want to call Severin and Philander. Then here, I will play Dienta, and we'll be able to counterblast 1 and call a grade 1 or less, a grade 3 or less card from drop. Okay, now that we have 2 or more grade 1 or less rear guards in our back row, our 2 Dientas get 5k. And our Severin gets 10k since it was called by a card ability this turn from drop. Okay, from here, since we're going to just kind of attack vanilla here, we're just going to swing with the Cristianos first for 23, 31. We'll go 1. We'll go power to here and draw, and second check critical. Whatever happens there, they're probably taking the Vanguard since we only attacked twice this entire game. And then we'll also just give the power to the 7 on this side. At this point, we go 18 plus 13 for 31, and then we go 33, 46, and then we end our turn there. I think we're dead though. Okay. Opponent's next turn, we'll take 1, no triggers. Oh, Severin retires itself. And then we can just toss PGs and then guard there for guarding 4 attacks. Okay. Or taking 4 attacks in that turn. We'll stand and draw. And we'll go into our persona and draw. We get another Nectar of Sensationalism. And we'll go from 6 to 9 energy. Cristianos' skill, counterblasts 1. Oh yes, we don't have any more copies of Cristianos, but we still do get the plus 10. And since we're persona riding, the front row just gets 10k for fun. Next thing we're going to do is Energy Blast 4 from 9 to 5. And we are going to mill 2, 1 and 2. And we are going to call Severin and Tideline. And we're going to replace the Dienta here. And flip that around. And I think we're at least 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 cards in drop. Okay. From here, we'll Soul Blast 1. Yep, Soul Blast 1 to give Severin. Let's see, so Severin's at plus 20 right now. We'll go up to plus 30. And then Tideline also goes up. And then from here, we'll just call over the Eleftheria, the Alana, so we can put that into Soul. And we'll play Nectar of Sensationalism. This deck is really fun to play. I'm not giving it justice right now. We'll play the Nectar of Sensationalism. And let's see how many cards there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so we're at 16 cards in drop, so that's an extra 15k altogether. We go up to plus 45k, so this thing's swinging for 58 by itself, and an extra crit. And then, of course, in our back row, the Antha gets an extra 5k, because we have 2 or more grade 1 or less rear guards, and Philander gets an extra 10k as well, because we have at least 10 cards in our drop zone. So let's start swinging here. So we'll swing with Severin first. This is 58k with an extra crit. We'll Soul Blast a Cristianos to restand it and give Cristianos an extra 5k. And then we'll swing over here with the Vanguard first. This is 13, 38 plus 4 is 42. And we get our drive checks. First check, nothing. Second check, nothing again, but that's okay. We still have our big lanes. And we'll swing over here first for 10 plus 30 is 40 plus 8, 48. And then we'll swing over here again with Severin for 58 plus 13, which is 68, 71 with crit. In this case, we probably lose the game after. Yes, so the game does not last very long with this deck, but obviously the numbers that you can hit with it are really fun. I do admit it is a bit of a perfect storm kind of deck. Things really do have to go your way, but once they do go your way, it is very satisfying to have this happen, because again, you're swinging for 58 with a crit and then swinging again for another very high number depending on what is back here. So in this case we had Diantha, and another timeline you could have a Philander in the back, which would have changed this to plus 55k total to the lane, so this would be 76. So it's even higher. Your opponent needs PGs or OTs to be able to get around this, and yeah, it's just a very fun deck to play. I've really enjoyed the deck. It can punch above its weight in certain matchups, but there is a clear disadvantage, of course, with all of the start decks in going second. The nice thing is you get a lot more cards, especially with the Rancor chain just being able to draw you the extra 2. But again, your breaking point is your first Persona Ride turn, because it's the first time that you get more than 3 attacks per turn off of the Severin. But if you're going first, you get an extra turn sort of to set up and not take so much damage early. But anyway, guys, if there's anything that I missed in this video, please let me know down in the comments. If you have any questions about the choices or any alternatives to what you could run, please feel free to ask down below and I will get to them as soon as I can. Again, we are getting more dedicated support in set 4, and you can actually just use that in place of other things. Some things that I would say that you do really need, of course, besides the Severins, I would say that you need the Dianthas. If you don't want to play Nectar of Sensationalism, then you don't have to. I've just found that it adds a lot more pressure to opponents in the mid game, because if you are able to sort of get an early game going, just calling grade 2s and stuff to the field, and you push your opponent to 4 before your first Persona Ride turn, then this Severin is a must guard for the rest of the game, and it's swinging twice every turn. But other than that, everything is very flexible. Again, I would replace the Eleftherias right away with the Alpinums as well as the Louvoirs for the Prevailings, especially if you don't want to play the orders. But yeah, other than that, the deck is very solid. I like it a lot. Even if we weren't playing the extra crit, this thing is still swinging. Let's see, so this is minus 15 the order, so it's still swinging for 43k twice minimum, and I think that's really good, because even with the other trial decks, you aren't getting that high of a number. You're not getting this kind of setup with some of the other trial decks because of that order, because of the Nectar of Sensationalism order. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry if it got incoherent at any point. Again, if you want any discussion on this deck, I am more than willing to have it and sort of break it down. And I'm also open to trying other build paths. Again, this is just the way that I've found is really enjoyable to play the deck. And yeah, that is everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.